So this is the type of people that we're talking about. This is the vision that the Yitzhak Avarka, the Seer of Lublin, the Kotzker had. They were living in a just fire, just to understand. You know, the Kotzker said about himself, he says, in Varka, he says, for some reason you feel like close to the people. In Kotzk Mamish, the way is by separating yourself. What do I mean separating yourself? In the word for holy, Kedusha, there's two meanings. I actually thought that the first time I saw this teaching was in Ishbitz, the Mei Shirach, but it's really Kotzk, probably before, is that holy, Tosos and Kedushin says, means separated. To separate yourself, to remove yourself from the mundane, from others. There's another meaning, and the meaning is to prepare yourself. So like when it says Kadoshim Tiyu Ki Kadosh Ani, it says you shall be holy, for I am holy. What does it mean? Because God is holy, how could you even imagine and envision yourself to be holy? And the rabbis have different answers, but the Kotzker says it means like this. It means prepare yourself to be holy, because if you have a little faith, if you have a little belief in the holy, then Hashem's holiness will be able to come into you. So in Kotzk, the holiness, which meant separateness and preparing yourself, getting yourself ready, were one and the same. It always had to work on yourself. You can never trust yourself from yesterday to be good enough for today. So for example, in Kotzk, they had no room for outward flamboyance, which was quite popular by some other Polish Hasidim. The fire of a davening, meaning the hislavus, the passion of a impassioned song and teary-eyed prayer moved many of the Hasidim, and many of the courts had that. In Kotzk, they said there's a teaching about Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the high priest. It says, V'yas kein Aaron. After he was commanded to light the menorah and prepare the menorah in a certain way, it says, and Aaron did so. And Rashi brings down the sages, Magid, it teaches us Shaloshina, he didn't change. But what would I think? That Aaron would hear a commandment from God and he would do it a little differently. So the Kotzker says it means that he didn't do it in a way that he put on a show. He did it exactly as he was told, meaning internally, not externally. There was no external movement on his part. It was just connecting to infinite connection, that he didn't show it. That's how he interprets it. And there's another teaching by the Kotzker that's actually quoted by the Ishbitzer, the Yaakov Yosef, that we'll get to soon. Mordechai Yosef of Ishbitz, who was the Talmud of the Simcha Bonim, and a contemporary of the Kotzker, and for a little while the Rosh Yeshiva in Kotzk. He brings down this Torah. He says the same pasuk, same Rashi. What does it mean? You could imagine the first time Aaron lit the menorah, how much fire he had, how in love with God he was. But you would think that 20 years later, 30 years later, he had forgotten about that original inspiration. By then it was just a daily mitzvah routine without any without any chayas, without any life. So he says, Rashi comes and says, Shoroshina, he never changed. His whole life, every time he lit the menorah, he was mamish on fire. He was mamish in love with God, just like the moment that he received the first revelation about the menorah. That's the essence of Kotzker, is not to change. What does it mean not to change? It means to not to change means you have to constantly change. You have to constantly renew yourself. Because the human nature is that we're inspired. This is just learning a little bit of the teachings of Jacob this week of the Kotzker Rebbe. He says, you know, today we don't have the minds that we need to have to be inspired, because our minds aren't on the level, they're not big enough. So even when we were inspired, that inspiration doesn't last that long. Because to really be inspired is to be so on fire that a week goes by, a month goes by, a year goes by, and I can have an instant recall of what it felt to be in the presence of holiness, to be touched by Kedusha, and I could be reawakened just like I was there. So in Kotzker, that was how they operated. And not to do things just because it was done yesterday. One of the famous students of the Kotzker was Rebbe Eger. Rebbe Eger was the grandson of the famed Rabbi Akiva Eger, considered to be mamish the greatest of the generation in Torah. And Rebbe Eger, for him, he was already fluent in the whole Shas and the whole Talmud. He was already a great Torah scholar. And the Kotzker, just like he was picked out by the seer and brought over to Lublin, the Kotzker decided he heard of this, the greatness of Rebbe Eger. He decided that mamish, he was going to also reach out to this young, not yet chassid, this misnagid, Rebbe Eger, and get him to be his chassid. So he sent chassidim to go recruit him. But every time the chassidim would engage him in conversation, he would outsmart them, he wasn't impressed with them, and nothing ever happened. They were like recruiters then. I think it's a new thing, you know. So then he sends out some other chassidim. These chassidim have what it takes. And they come to the Beis Medrash where Rebbe Eger is davening, and it's on Yom Kippur. And it's after Kol Nidre. And I don't know the exact story, but I might be exaggerating a little bit. Poetic license. But after Kol Nidre and Ma'ariv, 98% of the people leave, and a few percent of the people stay. They're going to stay the night and learn. Now, Rebbe Eger, he's learning Masechtas Yuma, he's learning Gemara Yuma, and he's sitting and steiging away learning. And there are two chassidim who are there also. There are two Kotzker chassidim, and the Kotzker chassidim say, they take out a little flask, Yom Kippur night, they're supposed to be fasting. They pour each other a little thing. They say, we have to make a l'chaim and a bracha for Yom Kippur for the forgiveness that we're getting. How could you not make a l'chaim? God is forgiving us. We have to make a l'chaim. And they raise their glasses, and Rebbe Eger, he looks at this, he picks up his eyes from the Gemara, and he can't believe what he's seeing. But he's a from a Yid, he's a fine Yid, and even Chassidim, he won't let them do an Aveira like this. So he runs over to them, he says, no, no, no. He says, what's going, you can't. He says, what do you mean, why can't you? He says, you state in Torah, it says in the Torah, the Pasuk says you can't